Dav Samach Hey Amid Aleph, the second line from the top at the two dots. Yotzakat Rishena, the first group left. So we learned that there were three groups that came in, three groups, one after the other, that came in to do the Avodah of the Korban Pesach. So now we learned the Brisa, he Nikras Kaz Atzlan. It's the third group. The third group was called the lazy group. They delayed it to come till it was a third group. Well, there has to be three groups. Somebody has to be in the third group. So what is the negativity? Why are they criticized? What should they have done? More answers. Nevertheless, they should have been the ones to be mazars themselves, to hurry themselves, and not be in the last group. Like we learned, the Rebbe the world can't exist without perfume merchants and without tanners. The world needs all kinds of trades. It needs both of them. But Ashi Misham Nosam Basam and Oiloi Misham Nosam Bursi. But however, the one is fortunate, the one he deals in perfume, sweet smelling spices, rather than the one who has to deal to be a tanner with the items, or the leather with just tanned, which has a very, very bad odor. The world can't exist without Zacharim Nekevas. The world needs both Zacharim Nekevas, but fortunate is the one who is Banav Zacharim and Oiloi Misha Banav Nekevas, the Banav are Nekevas. So there's different pshatim in how to understand this. What do we mean by this? The one pshat is that the difficulty is by a woman, by a girl, the father has to worry to marry her off, has to worry about her tznius. There's a lot of daigas involved. The Miri says another pshat, what it means is, Ashimi Shabonav Zachar. It's not referring to girls and boys. It's Ashimi Shabonav Zacharim, Ashimi that his sons have the attribute that they're Zacharim and they don't act like Nekevas. Some Sefer says in a different way that he says that the midah of Zacharim are to be nicer and Nekeva to be mekabel. And again, similar way to the Miri, but in a slightly different vein, that it says Ashimi Shabonav Zacharim, that his sons have the attribute of Zacharim, of being nice to them, givers, and not one who has sons who are mekabel. The person who has his sons, Ashri Mish, that his sons are Naisim and not Mekablim. It says that the procedure that they did for the Avodah Korban Pesach on a weekday was like Shabbos, except for an exception, one that it mentions in the Mishnah, that the Kohanim used to wash the floors on Erev Pesach, the on Shabbos, Shaloi B'tzayin Chachamim. Shaloi B'tzayin Ma, in fact, the Gemara, not with the consent of whom? Was not with whose consent? Omar Rav Chisda Shaloi B'tzayin Rabbi Eliezer. It was not with the consent of Rabbi Eliezer. The Rabbanan Amar Shvus. The Rabbanan says the Shvus ain't Shvus b'mikdash. The Rabbanan say the Isser to wash the floors is the Rabbanan, and we have a principle, we have a rule of ain't Shvus b'mikdash. So there l'chayr would not have been a problem. But according to Rabbi Eliezer, as we'll see, there's an Isser deraisa involved, and therefore it would be also. What is this? What is this machalik desanya? We learned if one milks an animal. He curdles the milk. He makes cheese. He makes blocks of cheese. So in all these cases, as we'll see, he's chayiv. What is the chayiv for milking? That's mafarak. He's separating the milk from the udder. So it's like a toldav dash, like removing the fruit from a tree or the grain from the husk. So that is an Isser deraisa. Mechabetz, he curdles the milk, that's a boirer, he's separating the components of the milk. Megaben is boina, he makes blocks of cheese. So as we'll see, in all of these things, there is a deraisa. Mechabet sweeps the floors of a house of merabetz, and he sprinkles a water on it to keep the dust down. And he's roida chalas dvash, he removes the honey from the honeycomb. So now in these three cases as well, And over here, this is a das yachid b'shoigig b'Shabbos chai v'chatas. It's as well as an issa d'oraisa on shoigi on Shabbos be chai v'chatas b'yontav. Heza b'yontav loikis harboim. There wouldn't be a chatas, but on yontav there would be malchus. Divrei Rabbi Eliezer. So Rabbi Eliezer says that in all of these cases there is an issa d'oraisa involved. So he says similarly that if one sweeps the floor, there's also a d'oraisa. If one sweeps an earthen floor, then he's masha gumes. He levels the floor. So that is boina. And he's a rabbitz, also he sprinkles water over to keep the dust from rising. So therefore, it also fills up the holes. That's also, it'll be boina. And if he removes the honeycombs, that's considered kaitzer. He's removing something. It's a honeycomb is considered to be mechuber to the karka. So it's like he harvests. It's like he's cutting it down from the ground. That's what Rabbi Eliezer holds. They say no. They said in the latter cases, not in the first three cases, but in the latter cases, these are only a shus. This only an issa d'Rabbanan. So they hold that removing the honey from the honeycomb is not kaitzer. They also hold that in the case of sweeping the floor and sprinkling, they hold that it's not a d'oraisa because it's davar she'ein miskaven, and they hold that it's not a psikration. What does Rabbi Eliezer hold? Why does he hold that the case of sweeping the floor? Why does he hold that it is a d'oraisa? So perhaps he considers it to be a psikration. That's one possibility which Tosfos rejects. Another possibility and why he would consider it to be an issur d'oraisa, because he says that he's miskaven to mashal gumais, even though it's not something that he wants, he needs, but that's his intent to do it. Rabbi Yever finds difficulty with it. What does that mean? That if he doesn't need it, he has no purpose in it, but he's miskaven to do it. Well, if he's miskaven to do it, and there must be, by definition, he has a purpose in it. But that's another pshat in Tosfos. Al kol panim, Rabbi Eliezer holds that these are issur d'oraisa, but Chachamim hold that these are only d'Rabbanan. So they hold that sweeping the floor is a d'Rabbanan. So therefore, if they hold it's a d'Rabbanan, it's a d'Rabbanan. So therefore, they hold that that's why it was mutter. It was mutter over here in the Beis HaMikdash because ein shvus b'mikdash, and therefore they were allowed to do it. But according to Rabbi Eliezer, it's a d'oraisa. So it's shaloi v'rotza and Rabbi Eliezer. Tosfos asks, even Rabbi Eliezer holds that on a floor that's not an earthen floor, a marble floor, which was the floor that was in the Beis HaMikdash, there's no issur d'oraisa. So what's the chiluk? Tosfos answers in one of the terutzim that between the slabs there was earth. There was earth between the slabs of marble, of stone. So therefore, you had earth over there, and he wants to fill those areas that have the earth between the slabs. He wants to fill the holes over there. So therefore, that's where there would be. It's filling the leveling those earthen areas. There would be, according to Rabbi Eliezer, a d'oraisa. Rav Ashi Omer, he says, you could say even it's shalei b'ratzon chachamim. They hold that it's only the Rabbanan, and we have a principle in shvus b'mikdash, but nevertheless, it could be according to them as well, because Rabbi Nosson, is going according to the sheet of Rabbi Nosson, the Sanya, Rabbi Nosson Aimer, shvus tzricha hitira. When we say ein shvus b'mikdash, that's only when it's needed for the avodah. And that's where we're matter. But shvus she'ein tzricha, but a shvus that's not needed, that we don't need it for the avodah, then they weren't matter. Now this was not needed for the avodah. So therefore, the Rabbanan would hold that this type of shvus, even though it's a d'Rabbanan, and this type of shvus in the mikdash would be also. So it could be according to the Rabbanan as well. The Mishnah said that Rabbi Yehuda said he would take a cup, he would fill it up from the blood that was on the floor of the Azora. There was a lot of blood on the floor of the Azora. He'd fill it up, and he would do zrika. Tanya Rabbi Yehuda, he would take a cup from the blood, the mixture of blood that was on the floor of the Azora. Why did he do that? Because if the blood from one of the korbanos was spilled, nipsas and machira. So he has a blood over there. It could be that there was blood from one korban that was spilled on the floor, that the avodah wasn't done with it, and by now, by gathering this up, by scooping it up, he might have some of that blood, and he'll do zrika by the mizbeach, and therefore be mechaper for him. He'll be yotze the mitzvah of the korban pesach for him. He'll be machshir the korban. Well, it's only kosher for the mizbeach if there's a kabbalah. If it's collected in the kli first, this spilled on the floor. So how can this be kosher? So Mora says, Minal Yada, you're telling me that your lashon is v'haloi niskabel b'kli. You're saying it in a definitive way. It was not. There was no kabbalah. How do you know? Minal Yada Ella. The Mora says hachi kamli shema loy niskabel b'kli. Maybe there was no kabbalah b'kli, and therefore it won't help. So therefore, it's nothing is going to be accomplished by that. So the more answers, Amar lehem af ani lo yamati, ela b'niskabel b'kli. And chanami, I'm only talking blood that there was a kabbalah, but after the kabbalah, it spilled out. So, frankly, well, how do they know that it was niskabel? There's blood lying on the floor of the Zohar. How did they know that there was a kabbalah b'kli? So my answer is the reason, man, they're diligent. They certainly would have done the Kabbalah in a kli. It would not have spilled out on the floor. The Gemara's reason, Frank, the Gemara is reason. If you're telling me they're so diligent, then how did it spill on the floor? How did it get to this point? If you're telling me this reason, then they would have done Zrik on the Mizbeach. More answers. Agav Zerizusayu the Avde Mishtapech. He said that's Gufa. He Gufa because they're so diligent. Then they were rushing. Therefore, it would spill instead of doing the Zrik on the side of the Mizbeach. It could have now. They were hurrying so much, and it spilled on the floor. Frank the Gemara. Well, how? Nevertheless, even if you're going to say that we know, well, we can assume that there was a Kabbalah b'kli, but v'aloi dam atamsis mu'urav boy. But the dam that's done for Zrik on the Mizbeach is the dam hanefesh. That's when it's shechted, the blood spurts out. That first spurt of blood, that is dam hanefesh. That's what's kosher for the Mizbeach. Afterwards, the blood drips out, drains out. That is called dam atamsis. That blood is not kosher from Mizbeach. So on the floor, there's all kinds of blood over there. So there's also mixed in with dam atamsis. And that's not kosher for the Mizbeach. So Rabbi Yehuda, more answers, Rabbi Yehuda l'tamei, Domer damatamsis damalyu. Yeah, but Rabbi Yehuda holds damatamsis is considered blood. It has a din of blood. The sanya damatamsis ba'as hora, it's only with halav, but Rabbi Yehuda, Omer b'ikaras. Rabbi Yehuda said damatamsis is considered regular blood, just like there is a oynish for kores, for eating blood, drinking blood, so too for damatamsis, not only damanefesh. I frankly Gemara, well, even though that's true, but however, V'Omar Rabbi Elazar Moider Rabbi Yehuda in Kapora She'ina Mechaper. But as far as Kapora, as far as the Mizbeach, he's Moider that it's not kosher for the Mizbeach. She'nemra ki Adam hu ben nefesh yichaper. It's only bedam a nefesh that the kapora, that you have the kapora dam shan nefesh yaitze by mechaper, dam she'ein han nefesh yaitze by ein mechaper. It's not mechaper, so therefore you have blood on the floor of the zor, some which is kosher from the mizbeach, some which is not. Gathering up, scooping it up, how can you now say that you can now do shvicha on zrika rather on the mizbeach, on the side of the mizbeach, and have a kapora? It's mixed with dam that's not right for that. More answers. El Rav Yehuda l'tamei, even though the dam atams is not kosher for the mizbeach, it's not mechaper, but Rav Yehuda l'tamei domer ein dam mevatel dam. But nevertheless, he says that dam is not mevatel dam. So even though it's not mechaper, but it's not mevatel, it's not going to nullify the dam nefesh. So therefore, if you have this mixture of the dam nefesh and the dam tamsis, even though the dam tamsis is not kosher, but it's not going to be mevatel the dam nefesh, and therefore you can use this mixture and do zrika by the mizbeach and effect the kapora.